Alright, so we've been picking away at the Duke. So I put, well, front accessories and stuff sort of on. It's got the motor mount brackets and stuff back on. I put the exhaust manifold on. So what we're going to do is we are going to put the intake manifold on right now. I've taken and painted it, as you can see, after it got a good scrub. So let's get it on here. Okay, so what I've done in preparation for the new gasket, these are our intake ports here, right? And this is a water jacket on the end. So a little bit of silicone around the water jacket to help the gasket seal. And just a little bit of the high-tack gasket adhesive just around the intake ports again, just to help them seal a little better. I had a little bit here, I forgot, that's where the EGR gets the exhaust gases from, so that probably wouldn't hurt to have a little bit of high temp sealer there, considering the temperature of those exhaust gases. So we've got the gasket on there. And snug up 2 bolts. And now what we can do is we'll grab the rest of the bolts and I'll just start them, and then once they're started we can torque them. Okay, so here is our torque spec. So I didn't even talk about this, but this is the tightening sequence and torque for the exhaust manifold bolts. And then over here is our intake bolts, and they get torqued to 25 foot-pounds is what we're going to torque them to. Okay. 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 Put down a little bit of this one. There it is. Okay. I get that one, so we'll do this one next. That one's tight. Okay, just make sure these two are tight. Put swivel on here. Okay. All right. That is our intake manifold installed. Okay, so I've been picking away at the Iron Duke here. As you can see, I got the motor mounts on, I've got the fuel lines back on it, intake is on it, brackets are on it, fan is back on it, pulleys are back on it, the bypass pulley brackets are on it, manifolds on it, the fuel filter is on it, the harness brackets on it. The 2 other harness brackets are on it here. So we are getting closer. I'm probably going to end up putting it in the truck today. That's my plan. I know I got a bunch of little things to put back on it still, but I can do them with it in the truck. So it's not that big of a deal. I get the transmission here. I'm going to put the tail back on it. And then we got our flywheel and a clutch kit to put on too. Check our space on the other side. Pretty good. We got to come forward though. Okay, go up a little bit. You just gotta remember we don't have a transmission supporting it either. It's lined up pretty good though. Get some bolts in here. Put a bit of anti-seize on everything. There we go. Okay, put a couple nuts on it now. Same on the other side. And we can tighten these up. Okay, so that is our engine back in place. Got everything bolted up here. As you can see, I have the floor jack currently supporting the tail of it until I go ahead and put the transmission back on. First, before doing that, I got to replace the rear main seal and pop out the pilot bushing. After that's done, we can go ahead and put our flywheel on and the pressure plate and the clutch and all that fun stuff. Okay, so I use a slide hammer to take the pilot bushing out, and then to install the new one, what I do is I find a socket that's about the same outside diameter, and I just kind of take and tap it in until it's flush. Right there. Now I've already done the rear main seal here too. Show you how I did that. So that's how I removed my old pilot bearing, bushing, whatever you want to call it. I just take and I shoved in the one end of the slide hammer here and then just popped it out. Easy peasy. Doing the rear main seal, I take an old screwdriver and I just tap it in down the side, right, up against the block, not the crank, and then I just pry it out. Putting the new one in, I take the old seal, I lay it on the new one, And then I take one of my bushing drivers and then I use the same hammer and just tap it in. That way I'm not going to mar anything, and that gives me enough clearance to clear the snout of the crank. So I ended up, because of how nasty the old flywheel was and the cost to purchase a new flywheel was actually less than it was to have it resurfaced. So that's what we did. We bought a brand new flywheel. So I'll get it out. We'll give it a wipe with some brake cleaner to take off the shipping goo they put on to prevent it from corroding. And we'll get it ready to go on the truck. Okay. So these flywheel bolts get torqued to 65 foot-pounds. And as you can see, what I do is I wedge something between the flywheel and the dowel pin here. Okay, we'll just make sure they're all good now. Actually, I had a hard time finding these bolts because I couldn't remember what I did with them after I took them out of the engine and transmission before. Turns out they were in the cab of the truck in the driveway, so. Okay, now we can install our clutch disc and pressure plate. Okay, so here's our new clutch disc. And now you'll see, hopefully, that it says flywheel side. If you put this disc in backwards, you're going to have a bad time. I put a bit of grease on the end of my installation tool where it goes into my pilot bushing, and now we can install our clutch disc. Okay, now we're ready for our, of course, pressure plate. Okay, so we'll take our pressure plate here and we'll just line it up with these holes and do our best to kind of hold it in place here and get some bolts started. Now I did use a touch of red Loctite on them, not because it's 100% necessary, but because it's one of the things that I'm a little bit paranoid about, is having one of these bolts back out of the flywheel or out of the pressure plate. Let's face it, it's a 4-banger S10 with double-digit horsepower. I'm not going to be out here driving it like, you know, there's no tomorrow, but at the same time, I don't want to have any problems. So we'll get these all in here started, and then we'll just gently snug them up, and then we'll torque them to 15 foot-pounds. Now you're going to have some resistance because of the Belleville spring here. You'll watch the fingers will actually come in as it gets tightened. Okay, let me get my torque wrench and get it set. Okay, it's clutch and everything assembled.